Hey guys, this has to do with an article I wrote, and it was February in 2012. So that's been a few years, 14 years, I guess. And it was about the petrodollar. And I was reading it earlier, and I thought, wow, that is highly prophetic in nature. Of course, anyone that followed this stuff knew that back then. But it's just pretty neat. As I go through this, you'll see how it's playing out on the world stage today. Pretty fascinating. Okay, petrodollar pumping U.S. policy on Iran. Backfire looms. As tensions between the U.S. and Iran heat up, myself believes the main reason behind America's harsh stance is Tehran's move to seek an alternative to the dollar as an oil currency. That's really what this is all about, this whole war. It's not so much the oil, but the fact that they were trying to bust outside of the petrodollar paradigm, which they have obviously successfully done. Economic sanctions, spearheaded by the U.S. and less willingly the EU, could have a disastrous effect on both of their respective economies. If Iran cannot sell their oil to Europe, there are plenty of customers waiting in the wings, and we now know who they are. And if they come bearing not petrodollars, but gold and sovereign currencies, then all the better for Iran. And we know that, of course, it's yuan with China. These sanctions, if enforced, will in effect place a serious dent in the power of the petrodollar. Any rhetoric regarding Iran's nuclear program and the insistence on crippling it is nothing more than a U.S. attempt to force regime change for one more receptive to maintaining the hegemony of the petrodollar. Okay. Okay, the world now knows the truth about the U.S. and how they conduct their affairs. Boy, do they really. Jesus. The things I'm seeing today, I never thought possible. That I never thought our country any country, I was just born in America. That's the thing, I could have been born in China or Pakistan or Nepal or anywhere, actually. Just happened to be America, which I kind of regret. Let's see. U.S. hostilities toward Iran have nothing to do with nuclear weapons development. If that were the case, then North Korea and Pakistan would be facing similar sanctions and threats, but they aren't. The difference, of course, is in what lies beneath the ground: oil. Iran has it, and other guys don't. At the heart of the issue is not Iran's dubious attempt to build nuclear weapons or even oil, but how that oil is paid for. In 1973, Richard Nixon promised King Faisal of Saudi Arabia that the U.S. would protect Saudi Arabian oil fields from any and all interested parties seeking to forcefully wrest them from the House of Saud. Now, you need to understand that Saudi Arabia, before he brought the Faisal family up as the head, it was just Arabia. So people need to know that. It hasn't always been Saudi Arabia. It's the Saud family, okay? They just threw their name on, which is pretty ballsy to add your name to a country name. That'd be like Trump America, although he's got the stones to do that, but I don't think it would work out for him. He could try, though, asshole. Okay, let's see. It's important to remember that in 1973, Saudi Arabia didn't have a fraction of the military and ground forces it possesses today.
To ensure the mitigation of recidivism.
Sorry, there's another background there. And they didn't possess today almost exclusively U.S. manufactured weapons. Of course, we sold most of their weapons to them. And the USSR was very much a threat in return. Saudi Arabia and by extension OPEC agreed to sell their oil in U.S. dollars only. And if that weren't sweet enough as part of the deal, they were required to invest their profits in U.S. treasuries, bonds, and bills. Now, see, that's serious business, because if they don't do that, and they can take all of those profits they get from the oil and they don't have to reinvest in our bonds, then, wow, we're going to lose all that revenue, and plus all that other money is going to be floating elsewhere. The real zinger is that all countries purchasing oil from OPEC had to do so in U.S. dollars, which that's how we got the nickname of petrodollars. This strengthened the U.S. dollar, resulting in steady U.S. economic growth cycle throughout the 80s, 90s, And, that's where exorbitant privilege comes in. The U.S. has been living so far beyond their means, it's just crazy. And it shouldn't be that way. And I wish it hadn't been that way. But I got to say, at 63, I was born in 1963. And so I enjoyed that exorbitant privilege when I became a teenager forward. Yeah. Countries purchasing OPEC oil started buying U.S. Treasury bills, bonds, and securities to ensure they could continue purchasing OPEC oil. This worked fine for the U.S. until 2001. Now, no plan, however well formulated, functions smoothly and does so indefinitely. In 2001, we enter Saddam Hussein. He floated a plan to sell oil to European currencies in lieu of petrodollars. There you go. We're getting to the real bottom of why we've invaded these various countries and done what we've done. Anytime there is a threat on the petrodollar, the U.S. springs into action, right up to killing the country leader, kidnapping them, whatever the case may be. Okay. He floated a plan to sell this oil on European currencies in lieu of petrodollars, and shortly after that, Iraq was suddenly found to be seeking and stockpiling weapons of mass destruction. Which allegations were spearheaded by the U.S., of course, and the world knows what happened. Suffice it to say that Saddam is dead and Iraq is back on track, selling its oil for petrodollars once again. Muammar Gaddafi harbored the Lockerbie bombers. He allowed various terrorist organizations to establish training camps in Libya. He tried to yeah. Okay. In Libya, he tried to buy a nuke from China in 72. In 77, he approached Pakistan and India looking for nukes. He sought nerve gas from Thailand. In spite of well over 50 failed assassination attempts on Gaddafi by Israel, the U.S., and the U.K., Libya was left to its own devices for the most part. Seeking nukes and harboring terrorists is one thing, but threatening the petrodollar is quite another. Gaddafi made a fatal error when he decided to move away from the petrodollar in favor of other currencies. Bad mistake for him. I saw the clip where he literally, I don't know who did it, but someone shoved a knife right up his rectum. It was just painful to watch. I'll never forget that image, man. It's horrible. And the U.S. is responsible. You should look at images before and after of, is it Tripoli, the main city in Libya? Yeah. Before and after the U.S. comes. Oh, my God. Now, this simply was not tolerated by the U.S. Having already played the weapons of mass destruction card in Iraq, something new was pulled from the U.S. regime change grab bag. Within a year, internal elements arose up in rebellion against Gaddafi, and now he is dead. Yeah. Internal elements, all funded and started and everything by CIA. And these people are supposed to be working civil servants for us. It's just insane. Okay. Let's see. I went a little too far. Sorry, people. Come back here within a year. Okay. Now, another one here is Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Remember that guy? About 14 years ago, something like that. Dominique Strauss-Kahn was a former head of the International Monetary Fund, so he was no good guy anyway. He was one of those guys that enslaves country into debt, so don't feel sorry for him. Suggested last year that the euro would be a more suitable oil reserve than the U.S. dollar. Within 3 months of that statement, allegations of rape ruined his career, derailed his bid for the French presidency in the process. Soon thereafter, all charges were dropped. But of course, les dommages étaient faits. The damage was done. Now, his replacement, Christine Lagarde, DSK's replacement as head of the IMF, sees no reason to change the current arrangement, naturalmente. The Iran situation is a little trickier. The U.S. has sought to dismantle. Boy, is it a little trickier. Too tricky for our dipshit in charge. Little trickier. Let's see. Now, in 2005, Iran sought to create an Iranian oil exchange, thus bypassing the U.S.-controlled petrodollar. Fear that Western powers would freeze accounts in European and London banks put an end to that plan. But that was not the end of their attempts, and Iran sought other ways to get around the petrodollar noose. See, this is why the U.S. has been after Iran forever, because they didn't play ball with this OPEC bullshit. The whole petrodollar thing, it just really struck them as wrong. And the reason is because Iran is a civilization. I've heard everything from 2,000, 2,700 to 4,000 years old, so I'm not sure. I think it's probably in the 2,700 sounds more accurate, but even so, 2,700 years, this culture has been thriving there, and they haven't attacked the U.S. They haven't attacked anyone in, was it 200 and something years? They haven't attacked a soul. They've never attacked us. They just haven't done anything to get this. It's all because of the petrodollar, and that's gone. So his whole plan just blew up in his face. Of course, Israel really didn't give a shit one way or the other what happens to the U.S. because they're in also. Now, I'm not saying Israel's an old country. We know it isn't, but I'm getting into watery territory here. The people who pretend they're Jews are using this as an excuse to wipe out Persia because they hate them too. America's been around 250 years, not yet, coming up here, but 249 years and 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. But compared to a 2,700-year-old culture. So they're just looking at us like, you fleas, get away from us. There are rumors that India, which imports 12% of their oil from Iran, has agreed to purchase oil for gold. Energy trade with China, importing 15% of its oil, and now it's up to way more than 15%. And natural gas from Iran may be settled in gold, yuan, or rial. South Korea plans to buy 10% of their oil from Iran in 2012. See, Kim Jong-un, he's hopped on board. What's happening is these countries are seeing that the U.S. is not indomitable and that they can be beat, and their carrier groups do not project total power. So it's like the emperor with no clothes. Iran has ripped the clothes off of the U.S. We're naked now. So that's what's going on there. Okay, it is likely to use gold on their sovereign currency to pay for it. Also, Iran is already dumping the dollar in its trade with Russia in favor of reals and rubles. Iran is breaking the back of the petrodollar. Remember, I wrote this back in 2012, so long time ago, and it's finally they broke that back. I'm in the U.S. and I'm going to suffer as a result of all this going on, but you know what? I'm just glad to see the U.S. put in its place. I mean, I'm so sick of invading, kidnapping presidents and leaders and killing leaders openly, and everyone knows they did it, and yet they just keep on doing this shit. I mean, shame on us as Americans for putting up with this. We elect these people that do anything they want, murder and kill and kidnap. So we've elected criminals that other people would put in jail for life or execute, and they run around and get airports named after them. How is that correct? I'd like to know, please. Okay, it is likely to use gold or their sovereign currencies to pay for it. Also, Iran is already dumping the dollar. Dump, dump, dump. Okay. To understand how disastrous this is for the U.S., one must have a basic understanding of how critical a role the petrodollar plays in the economic health of the U.S. Now, through King Faisal, lost my spot here. Sorry, guys. It's kind of a clumsy way to do this. Okay, through King Faisal, Nixon elevated the U.S. to supreme economic ascendancy, not unlike Damocles in his desire to rule. Sitting on the economic throne of the world is great, but Nixon was either unaware of the sword dangling over the U.S. economic system or chose to simply ignore it in favor of reaping the rewards of the moment. Just kicking that can down the road till someone had to deal with it. And it's not that Trump had to deal with anything. It's just that he chose to make a move to get rid of Iran and seize their oil. And Saudi Arabia was in on it, of course. I'm sorry. Israel, because, like I said, they want Iran gone. And the U.S. is going to be a little bitch and get out there and get people killed to do it, they don't care. And this country is run by AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, and you have no idea how many senators and cabinet members and House of Representatives, all they're dual citizenship to Israel. Anyone sitting there with dual citizenship, they shouldn't even be in Congress. They shouldn't be in government in positions of power because their loyalties are in question. They would be, and of course, and with Israel, you know, these Jews or crypto Jews, it goes beyond just an oath of office. It goes into blood and history and what they really need to do. Like that, there was a congressman who actually wore his Israeli defense uniform into congressional meetings. That's just shameful. Nobody kicked him out. I can't believe it, but it happened. Okay, by creating a petrodollar paradigm, the U.S. economy soared as all countries of the world were required to amass U.S. currency to purchase oil from OPEC nations. Sales of T-bills, securities, and U.S. bonds soared. The U.S. coffers fattened. With the U.S. dollar as the world's oil reserve, or oil currency reserve, economic fortune favored the U.S., which, when you lose it, economic disfortune heaps upon us. And it's coming, not yet, folks, but it's coming. People who think everything's going to be okay, please do not think that, because get prepared, buy food, buy water, buy supplies that will keep you from starving and going over and killing your neighbors next door for their food. Don't try it here. I got guns and I'm ready. Now, with great reward comes great risk. While other countries exchange their currency for the dollar, which they forfeited value of their own currency in the process, because the U.S. dollar is so strong. Like, Mexico was a bad example, but, I just think of their pesos were being almost worthless. They'd have to buy 40 million pesos worth to get a boat of oil or something. Let's see. The U.S. simply printed more money to match their needs and purchase their oil. So that's another thing that we do is we just print money for free, and here it is. Here's this money. People believe it's worth something, so it is worth something, Fiat money. Fiat money. The best example, okay, essentially for free. Now, the best example, where am I here? U.S. Okay. The best example is that while gasoline in the U.S. costs $3 per gallon, except in Europe, the same would be $6 or more, or $5 per liter or something. Herein lies the danger. If Iran is successful, and they are now, so we're up to current times here. If Iran is successful in its bid to set up their own bourse or oil exchange, then what need does the world have for all those U.S. dollars? Here we are. The question is being answered. The answer is none at all, and we're finding out because the dollar is set to crash. We are either going to crash the dollar or we're going to print more money to, quote unquote, purchase our way out of this issue by creating more money, which will in turn devalue the currency that's already on the street right now. So that will result in potentially hyperinflation if that happens. And knowing the Fed and the way that they handle these things in the past, I'm leaning towards that. They're just going to go into a hyperinflationary period. And of course, all those people who make those decisions are so insulated from any real economic uncomfort. They don't care if bread costs $1,000 a loaf because they have billions of dollars. And, so the people making the decisions for us are not affected by the decisions they make. That's a real problem. All right. They will ultimately devalue it into a position where hyperinflation becomes a risk. I know I'm kind of doubling on what I'm saying, and it's in the article here. So while the U.S. government saber rattles and prattles on and on about nuclear weapons and the threat Iran poses to the Middle East, the thin veneer of lies spouted by the elite-controlled media is being stripped away. And those people, the elite-controlled media, those people, they make so much money, they'll say anything. They'll sell out their country. They'll give lies to the public. News. It's supposed to be news that they're reporting on. Real, truthful news. And it isn't. They're all in on it and liars, and they get their script from the same people. You can find this on maybe YouTube, I don't know, but it'll have a screen of like 80 different networks with their anchors all saying the exact same thing, and they'll get it synchronized until all 80 are forming their lips at the same time for the same words. And ironically, I saw one that had, and alternative news is a real threat to democracy. And they were all saying it, threat to democracy from 80 voices. I mean, the irony, alternative news. Jesus, balls on these people. Okay. A practical example of hyperinflation: one loaf of bread in a healthy economy is $1, and in an inflationary, it's $1.75. In a hyperinflationary economy, $500. Back in the Depression, people were burning money and lining their walls with it in the winter. Same thing happened in, don't think it can't happen here, guys. Happened in Argentina. This is all in the 1900s, so just within 100 years. The Weimar Republic of Germany, 100 years ago today, they were in the deep, deep shit with hyperinflation. They were literally just burning paper barrels full of money. It was worthless, utterly worthless. So, and there's no food on the shelves. Just think what happens when there's no food on the shelves. You don't have any water, and you never wanted to have a gun because that's just mean. And people are trying to break into your house to see what they can steal from you. Of course, you don't have anything, but they don't know that. So you are defenseless, cold, and hungry just because you didn't have your eyes open. Is that how you want to be, Daddy? Is that the plan for your family? Is that what a man would do? No, a man is going to pay attention, going to stock up food, stock up water, and have guns and a plan ready. People come in to steal from his family. It's adios, amigo. I mean, I hate saying that. It's not a very Christian thing to do, but it's pretty clear in the Bible. God makes a good case. Jesus makes a case that, yeah, you can defend yourself. You can be a Christian and defend yourself, okay? This slap and turn the other cheek and give them another slap opportunity. That doesn't extend to them murdering you and your wife. There's fight or flight thing, It's instinctual in all animals, and God didn't create us this way to just be pussies and lay over and just wait for someone to kill us, No. Okay. Boys are large and dangerous, but rarely are they intelligent. Now, I regret writing that sentence because a lot of these people in the government, they are very intelligent, but they're also just greedy and they have blinders on. And like I said, they don't really care about the fallout of their decisions because, they're insulated. Okay, now Damocles wisely vacated that throne of Dionysius before the sword fell upon his head. But the U.S. is foolishly refusing to step down from their economic dais in spite of the catastrophic effect of current policy direction will mean for the U.S. and citizens of the world economy. It's exactly what's happening. These effects are happening right now, and the world economy is going to crash because of Israel and because their little puppet stooge, Donald Trump, has allowed this to go down. It's just shameful as can be. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. Be cool. And go buy food. Go buy guns and ammo. And don't forget, if you got a pistol, don't just settle for one magazine that comes with the pistol. You need at least 5 to 10 magazines, always filled up. Because if you're in a fight, you can't just be like, oh, hold on a minute. I got to get another magazine. Give me a second to load. No. Dudes, you got to have the clips ready. Don't forget that. I hope it never comes to that, although I think that it will.